Welcome back, everybody. And I'm just going to mention for the recording here, because now we are recording. So for those of you who are watching the recording, we did a settle in practice. So feel free to pause the video and do a settle in practice and reflecting on a question that we're going to dive into. Just a few shares here about how the landscape has changed in education since the pandemic, especially with well-being. So let's go ahead and open up for, we probably could take about 2 or 3 shares. Just what did you notice in your breakout rooms, and how has this landscape changed, or patterns you've noticed? And feel free to either unmute, or if you feel more comfortable in the chat box, I can also read those out loud as well. So what are your thoughts?
I think there's been a lot of opportunities where to model regulation, self-regulation with kids. I feel like the patterns of behavior that I observe in my school are very, very evident with not only having the practice of being in school, especially our second graders. I feel like they didn't have a really normal kindergarten. They were virtual for first grade, and now they're in person in second. And they're my most fascinating grade level right now, because I feel like there's such dysfunction in their realm since COVID hit. And it's a great opportunity to bring, our knowledge and our modeling to help them work through that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else feeling called to share?
I do. I want to give praise to the teachers who have legitimately transformed the way they teach these babies. I think it's incredible for teachers to actually and I think they need to pat themselves on the back. You've gone from using textbooks and worksheets to truly bringing those kids in, especially when we were out for the first part of it and everything was virtually. Maybe not everyone showed up, but for those kids who showed up, you kept them engaged. You gave them a sense of a community, even online. I witnessed teachers doing virtual icebreakers and get to know you games and things like that. And to me, that's incredible. That shows a value because, we were like, man, we got this. We're going to go ahead and do what we need to do to make sure these kids stay engaged and that these kids realize that, hey, we're all in this together. And to me, I just have to give the praise to the teachers because that went above and beyond the call of duty for anyone.
I feel like we all need to give snaps for all of us and everybody, right? Yes, right? And even just how that feels to say it out loud. And maybe we didn't get a chance to hear it yet. So let's hear it now. And as we move into this next part of the presentation, it'll really kind of be like pulling the Band-Aid off. We're gonna pull to light a couple different things. And when I was reflecting on this question, and also feel free to continue sharing in the chat, just because of timing, we can't hear all the shares, but that's why we have our breakout rooms. So we're gonna be ripping that Band-Aid off here and just thinking about some of these patterns. And by day, I'm a climate and SEL coach for a school district, and I work with about 15 schools. And then outside of the school day, I'm a teacher well-being coach. It's really like a life coach for teachers. So I'm seeing a lot of different pieces here. And I noticed a couple different patterns, but I was doing a reflection and this statement came to mind. And I believe it was Nina who was yesterday, who was like, I just started writing, right? So when that urge comes, you got to write, right? So I'm going to read this out loud just because of the impact that it might have and just to have it on our heart. That we're experiencing a collective global experience. Now, you'll notice there that I didn't say trauma because sometimes that depends where we're at. And I could talk about that at another time, but I'm going to call it an experience here. And we are each experiencing our world story differently, yet collectively. We store it within our body, our brain, and our heart. This shows up as visible reactions or behaviors. Whether we know it or not, sometimes we create a block so powerful from experiences that when increased adversities happen, we are either heightened in our reactions or numbed. And just thinking about that, right? And I've noticed a couple patterns lately. And the first pattern here is that increase in activated stress responses, right? And through our discussions we've been having, we keep kind of bringing this up. Students may or may not be attending class. There may be some other pieces that are surfacing and bubbling, right? And so on the right side with our stress responses, in one of the breakout rooms also, I was sharing about how often we forget about that fourth one. We have the fight, we have the flight, we have the freeze, but we also have the appease. And a thought came to mind lately, and with the word resilience, and I'm all about resilience, and I believe that the butterfly to me is that symbol of resilience. But I would encourage us to think about it. And I keep hearing like, oh, our kids have been so resilient. Our kids have been so resilient, which is true. But in a way, I would ask and have us pose the question of, is it a false sense of resilience at times? Right? We can map out on the fight, flight, freeze, and appease. Are there actually stress responses happening that make it seem like there's resilience there? As in, okay, maybe the students might be seeming more passive. Okay, well, that would fall underneath here with our passive piece of the freeze, the low motivation as the freeze, our anxiety increasing, that's the flight. We have maybe a little bit more of our butting heads happening. Our world is doing a lot of this. We have a lot of work to do, but that's actually like our stress response happening. And then also the appease. And yes, I'll do that. Yes, we'll see me, notice me. Yes, anything you want, right? So just keep that in mind. And I do want to just mention a couple things here that maybe you want to look deeper into. The window of tolerance, and that as we've had, so we have our window, right? This is Dr. Dan Siegel's work. And I learn alongside David Trelevin. And I'll just mention as well, I could put this in the chat too, but David's work, so trauma sensitive mindfulness. David's work is wonderful with this, and he also really pulls in the window of tolerance. And so when we have our window, right, that's when our window of okay, that's what a lot of my students say. So window of okay. And we have those moments above and below our window. From the pandemic, what our window has done was here, but it does move, it's dynamic, right? So mindfulness is allowing us the opportunity to increase our window of being more okay, but a lot of our colleagues and our students don't have these practices yet. And so our window is smaller. So just acknowledging that what once was out of the window or in the window has shifted. Okay? A constant elevated state is also something that might be present that I've been noticing. And constant elevated state doesn't necessarily mean constant escalated state, because for ours that are in freeze and appease, they might not seem escalated. So we have to have that lens on of support. And for our teacher, ourselves here, we've become this keeper of the space. And in our breakout room, Hector was sharing about how we're taking on the secondary trauma piece and all of that. Yeah, so we have our own, we are taking in everyone else's. And so we have become the space keeper. And at least we, as in this community here, we might have those tools available to us to be in this space, but we need to be able to give that to other educators and other leaders. My other pattern that I've noticed, Matt kind of touched on earlier today, and I'm calling it content coping, where we are covering up the experience with emotions of the emotions with content. So the thing is, it's what education has always done. It's all what it knows. It knows education means learning, education means content, and it just knows, okay, how I sustain myself is giving more content and focusing on the content. We're stepping into a new way of teaching, and we have to, we need to. And thankfully the pandemic has happened because it's allowing us to have this conversation. And so what's happened is, it's almost like the can, right? Everybody is now a shaken can, all of us. And I'm going to have this like this for right now, right? So this is my can, imagine to shake it. And so we've covered it. So this is us, and we've covered it, us and our students. And what we're seeing is like this starting to happen, right? And it's only a matter of time before that explosion happens, right? So if we can continue to move in that space of regulation, that's our power space. And all of the learning we've been doing so far has allowed us to open that space for this. 2 more patterns. The next pattern I'm noticing, I keep having conversation about trust, right? Broken trust. Because especially with the trauma-informed space, we want to have predictability. We don't really have predictability anymore. We don't necessarily trust the environments that we're in. We don't necessarily trust, like, okay, do you have a similar idea as me? Is it different? How do I act with that? Where do I fall in this space with my relationships? Am I learning at home? And am I learning at school? Oh, guess what? I apparently am going to home today and I won't be back for several days. And when do I come back? I don't know. How about mass and the media right? So there's this constant lack of trust. And when we don't have trust, we don't feel safe. And when we don't feel safe, we're not open to learning. And so mindfulness allows us this opportunity to be, we were talking yesterday about that pain and the possibility. That's this, right? Like we're feeling, we got to recognize it, but then connect with that possibility and being in that space and growing with that space. And then finally, the last pattern that I've noticed is, I'm calling this the self-care twitch, right? And Sarah yesterday kind of mentioned this, being beyond self-care, but really it's become this boil instead of a buzzword. You say it and everyone's like, oh goodness. And there's now this influx of wellness opportunities and self-care, but because there's so much and there's not a lot of understanding, we have misunderstanding, which then creates the resistance to it. And we also have that sensation of teacher self-care guilt. We also brought that up as well, that we're feeling possibly guilty of taking care of ourselves. So I know these are kind of those negative sides, but we have to peel that Band-Aid off, because they're also, through these moments, are allowing us to have amazing opportunities to find solutions and connecting in a way. And so even for this last one, right, in the title, SEL is capitalized for a reason, right? And truly self-care, that's a skill. And I'd say probably most of us, if not all of us, until a particular point in our life, we were never taught explicitly how to care for ourselves. And so when we don't have the skills not going to happen. So if we can reframe self-care to truly be self-care, then we can start acting in this way and being in this way in the space of this important work that we're doing. So let's kind of just honor the chrysalis moment that the world has been going through, and ourselves and our students. And let's just kind of drop back down for a moment, feeling the bottoms of your feet. And doing a quick check-in, however you wish to be right now. Perhaps your eyes are open or closed, but connecting to yourself. Checking with your body, breath, emotions, and thoughts. What is coming up and shifted? And then taking a breath in for what we need. And a breath out for anything that we don't need. And checking back in. As you're ready, bringing yourself back. And honoring the space. And open your eyes if they were closed. We're looking around. That's a lot to take in. But we have to acknowledge, right? But that's also the importance of being here, right? This is the importance of our community, of all of us being here, right? Because through the collective, that's how we make our change happen. We have the ability to take action. All right. Now I'm going to check the chat box because there is a couple different things going on there. Let me check. Yes, self-care is crucial. Yes, true. Yes. Okay. And so this true. Oh my gosh. Feel free to take screenshots of whatever you want, everybody. It just might be something that inspires you. But right now we have this opportunity to rise and make a change in education. All of the right conditions are being formed right now, and we are getting called to do it, which is so exciting. And you can tell I just love this. Like, oh, it's amazing. Okay. So we're connecting mindfulness, we're connecting SEL, and they go directly together. And we've talked about how the inside and the outside, they're coming together, and they have to. It's that together piece. So when we have that self-awareness through mindfulness, and we're able to understand how our body is responding, what are those messages that our body is always giving and communicating to us? And when we know that, then we are like, self-management pieces. I have these different tools in my toolbox. I'm learning. I can be regulated in this space and focused in this space. And then when I'm regulated, now I can understand where everybody else is at and just feel that awareness. I understand you. I can feel empathy. And once I can understand that, then the relationship actually can become formed and are strong, which ultimately ends up being a responsible decision-making, which is what we want for ourselves, for others, for the world, right? Again, Mina was sharing yesterday about how do our actions impact our world? Well, all of this is all connected there. And reminding ourselves that SEL is that explicitly taught instruction, and they're the experiences that are helping us to be and grow to our full potential of who we are as that butterfly. So I want to give 2 quick shout outs here. We have our MBSEL micro-credential, which is super amazing and in this work, right? So I want to connect that together. And then I also want to give a shout out to somebody who is very special here. She's been learning together. And Stacy, I'm going to go ahead and stop and share for a moment. Is Stacy here right now? Stacy.
I'm here.
Okay, good. There you are. Stacy, I've been connecting with her and her passion and her story through SEL and her guided journals and pieces. With that, I just wanted to give her a shout out for the work that she's been doing. And all of us have this story, but you know, with the journaling and the connection with SEL, I wanted to just give Stacy a shout out here too for her amazing work. Stacy, you want to mention anything or?
Okay, I'm kind of speechless. I'm kind of surprised you called me, shouted me out, but thank you. No, I'm very grateful that Lindsay told me about this conference. I didn't know about it until sometime in December, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn so much. But this, what I do is I create SEL materials for elementary school based on journaling, based on guided journaling. And the focus of them is teaching kids to embrace what is special and unique about them, and to also respect differences in others. The overall goal is to create strong communities. So.
Thank you, Stacy. And I want to, again, just shout out for all that you do. And Stacy is coming into this space as a parent and through her lens as a parent. So it's just amazing to connect. And I just wanted to honor that in our space as well. And you'll see her stuff in the giveaway section as well. So in case you're interested. Thanks, Stacy. So coming back here, right? And the changes in your classroom, they start with us, right? Yourself. And when we start there, the ripples take place and it has an impact. And this is by far my favorite quote. You'll hear me say it in every single presentation. And for those of you who are looking to get buy-in from administrators, I feel like truly like you need to start with this quote before you share anything else, because the children reflect the nervous systems of the adults around them. And this is from Mindful Schools. And truly, you cannot argue with this quote. And it's just so powerful. And I always keep this in mind. So again, I want to just share it with you. To just have on your heart. Okay. And our hours always go by so fast. Okay. So, but how do we do it? Here's where we get to the how part. Well, we teach from the heart. And you'll notice that heart is in caps on purpose. So you actually are going to get a little sneak peek here of a couple different things I've been working on. So I'm excited to share it with you. So heart being a couple different meanings, right? Naturally, we're teaching from the heart, our heart space. Right? But also heart is an acronym and it's a routine to just have a part of your everyday. And in those moments when we have to make those choices as responsible decision makers. And I've been sharing to check in with my heart or check in with your heart. It's an integrated opportunity to do so. And quick personal note to this, as I've been exploring, so how this came about was I found myself being a lot more regulated and I was trying to uncover why. Why and how, what was happening? What's the secret sauce? So I was kind of exploring what that would be, and I came up with different elements. And originally I was working with a small group of colleagues as well, and we were noticing a similar pattern from all of us. And they've ended up being able to do a podcast and sharing different things there. And for me, I took the route of children's books. And so I have one coming out about this too. But it really goes to us, right? Oh, thanks, Mia. It goes to us. And for me, it's even more personal because like before I started doing these practices, my heart had a really strange rhythm. And once I decided to connect to myself through wellness, I go to the doctor and they normally would do the EKG and they're like, what's happened? I don't know, but your heart seems normal. But that's the power of wellness and mindfulness. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm taking care of myself. And that's the stress response, right? Like we're able to understand when we're having that physiological stress response, if we're able to connect with it or the trauma, then we're able to work through that with our well-being. Are you ready? All right. All righty, here we go. So here's a snapshot of just my children's book on one of the pages that I'll share. And so the acronym is Health, Environment, Affirmation, Response, Transform. I'm saying it that way because I want it accessible to kids and they're big words, but I also wanted to connect to the adults And for those of you who have learned together with me before, you know how I feel about when we're embodying it. And Toby mentioned this, when we're embodying it, we can be it, right? So I want there to be a common language between adults and between our students, our families, everyone. And so each of these have a guiding question. And it's almost similar to like Tara Brach and her RAIN method. So it's very similar, but in a way that spoke to me, in a way that I feel like it could speak to kids, because we always need to be checking with our heart before we make any decision. So the first thing is you're identifying, well, in the moment, what do I need to do? What is my goal? What's my purpose? What do I choose to do right now? What am I supposed to do? So just keeping that in mind as a first step, I'm going to break down each of these different layers. So the first one is health. And when we're talking about health, I'm connecting each of the CASEL competencies as well. So this is our self-awareness. And for me, health is how we feel. So I add a movement in there for our kids too. And the guiding question is, how are my body, breath, emotions, and thoughts? So you'll hear me say that all the time as well, but we have to connect to each of those components. And once we do, one might be stronger than the other, and we can notice that in our body, right? And the purpose is to know what those messages are. And do you keep going? Do you need to make a change? And how does that propel you in the direction you need to go with your goal or your purpose or whatever it is in that moment? So that's the first step. That's your thumb. That's health. Okay. How's my body, breath, emotions, and thoughts right now? And just sharing as well, this is one of my tools. I'm looking at our timing. I'm not going to go too deep into the tool because I believe I did share this in our micro credential. Or if you want to learn more about it, feel free to reach out and I can connect with you. But you'll notice this is a very simple way of leading a mindfulness practice. So for some of you who may be just stepping into this space, this is your left hand. For me, this is my left hand. It might be right to you right now, but this is my left hand. This is what I use for guiding a moment. This is heart. So they go together. So you're settling in, you're checking in with your body, breath, emotions, and thoughts. You have your moment, your practice of what you want. So you'll notice I followed all of these steps, even with leading us here today. You check back out with your body, breath, emotions, and thoughts, and then you close out. So if you're ever needing to lead a moment, you think of your 5-step moment, and I always tap the fingers to help me to guide in that moment. Okay, so just a tool that you can use as well. So for environment, so for this one, and some of the competencies can really go a couple different ways. I just picked a couple of the ones that I really resonated with it. So for environment, I went with social awareness and our relationship skills. And the movement for that one is environment because it's what's around us, but around can also be around inside of us. And you're asking, do you need to make a change in the environment? For example, if a group of students are working together, they're about ready to have maybe a little conflict there, you do quickly check in with your heart. They check in with how they're at. They check in, okay, how's that environment? Do I need to make a change even with my partner? Do I need to make a change in the location? Do I need to make a change in my materials, right? So you have the ability to connect with them there internally and externally. And they're noticing again, are the conditions right for success in that moment? The next one is affirmation. And this one goes to self-management because it's a strategy. It's a strategy to check in with our inner thoughts that we have. And affirmation I have as our power pose move. And in my children's book, a lot of these motions actually match the character. There's a couple characters on this page. So this is what that character is doing, and I liked it. And so this is your I am statement, because we can start changing that inner thought. And what is specifically going to help you with your goal in that moment? Sure, there are a lot of different affirmations we can say and they make us feel good, but if they don't directly connect to what is happening in the moment, They're just words happening. So just kind of noticing how that feels in the body, noticing what thoughts, being able to change the thoughts. I gave a couple of examples here, and this is always good to just have as a lesson with students and staff members, right? Just having a couple of go-to ones that can match different scenarios that are happening. Then we move into response. So once I've checked in with myself, how's my body, breath, emotions, and thoughts? Is there anything around me that I need to change in order to help myself make a better choice or be present and just know where I am at this time in this space? And then I've moved into, okay, what is my inner language, and do I need to change that? And how do I choose to respond? So knowing all this, what I've gathered, how do I choose to respond? And then response. In my book, there's a character who's about ready to run, and he has his flames. He's running, so that's our movement there. And it's taking action. So you're deciding, what kind of superhero choice do you need to make? Do you keep going with what you're doing, or do you make another choice? All of this through that mindfulness lens, all of this through social emotional learning and presence. And afterwards, so T comes a little bit later. T is transform. T is, honestly, I would say is probably all of the competencies, but I put the self-awareness and relationship skills, because you're reflecting on how did either myself or the experience, how did it change? Did the choice that I chose to make mindfully, was it aligned to myself and my heart? Did it go well? Can I make a change to that? And so also heart allows us the opportunity to reflect together and have those conversations. It's beautiful to combine these with a restorative conversation process. So for some of you who are trained facilitators or are using restorative practices, this goes really nicely with that, and is also that moment where you're like checking with your heart. It's like that proactive piece before the responsive decisions happen. I should say reactive decisions happen. So I'm going to stop sharing and check in with all of you so far. Questions, comments, ideas, takeaways, insights of any of that, of what I just shared. Jane Marie, thanks for the heart. The heart is perfect. Okay, so since we have about 5 minutes, I want to have us break into our breakout rooms. And here's what I want to share. Because we don't have enough time. There is an anchor chart, even within the book, of how this actually works. And I had us, I think I want to do this. Tracy, in the chat box, just so people have it, can you put the Jamboard and or PDF of the Jamboard in there? And there's what would you do scenarios using the heart strategy. So I'd encourage us for the last, we'll do 3 minutes. Either that or whole group. To look at those, and maybe you'll do it on your own, but to really think about how you can use this strategy in different avenues in education. There's a teacher example, there's a student example, there's a team example, there's a family calling home, all those different layers examples. And it's also good to do when you just need to check in with your heart throughout the day when there's not a major decision. It's all the time. And that is giving us an applicable, concrete way of accessing mindfulness that maybe other people may not have had the opportunity to understand before. Okay, so I guess, we're already starting with the clouds, I know.
I'm almost thinking,
Oh my gosh.
I'm almost thinking we don't go into a breakout room and then we're a smaller group.
Yes.
Not small, I mean, and I've never used a Jamboard. I'm looking at this. Is this something that we can all share onto?
Yeah, so it's a live living document. Everybody would have access. I think you need a Google account, but I would be curious, even after the session, try it out for yourself. Just put some ideas down there and let's just see what other people come up with. But yes, I want to know if there's any questions. If not, I can share just a couple different pieces as we close and a quick practice at the end, because we just have 3 minutes. Anything so far? What was the name of the session? Yes, so teaching, I believe it's teaching with your heart and self, or I'm gonna have to double check what I put on there. Yes.
I love how the SEL is part of self, because that, I'm sure they didn't plan that with that acronym, but.
Thanks, Michelle, for getting my session title in there. Yes, I love it. All right, so I am going to share my screen to give a couple of different pieces. We'll do a closing community breath. I know we're going to go into a break, but I will stay on if anyone has extra questions, okay, to maximize our time here. Okay, so this is going to be the book that's coming out, The Superpower of Your Heart. The date I have is May 22nd, 2022, because I just thought the numbers were awesome. There is information in it's not a giveaway section, but the resource section on the same document, so you can take a look at that. And I just wanted to share, in case you wanted to contact me again, just feel free to ask questions or connect on social media. If you want to share any feedback about this presentation, just to help me grow as a presenter, Tracy, again, you can share any and all of those links that I shared earlier. And I do just want to mention, in the giveaway section, I am giving away a full coaching cycle together. So if you want, you might have the opportunity to connect together. And there, I believe it's the 3 sessions there, so plus the connection call. So just mentioning that there's ways of connecting. And with that, let's just close with a community connection. So back into your space, dropping back down, connecting with your feet, settling in. Noticing settle in. And then checking in your body, breath, emotions, and thoughts. What's changed? What's consistent? Any texture, temperature, sensation, anything. And for the moment, we'll take just that community breath in of all the learning, and an even bigger breath to really put in all of the learning, and exhaling that learning into the world. Just being in that space for a moment, connecting it to your heart, into your heart, and into the hearts of others. And then check out with your body, breath, and emotions and thoughts again. Even from that short moment of connecting with your heart and the breath. And then closing out and coming back into the space however you wish to be, with that intention, and attention. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for all that you do, everybody.